Hello and welcome to Rock Paper Shotgun. This is Alice and I've spent about 12 hours inside my javelin battle armor in Anthem, so apologies if it honks in there a bit. Seriously, get some Febreze on that bad boy. Through a preview event and last weekend's demo, I've played Anthem at level 1, level 10 and level 30, and wanted to combine my thoughts to walk you through what I think works in Anthem and what doesn't. Hopefully I'll be walking slightly faster than you do in Fort Tarsis. For apparent frame rate reasons, you currently have to slurp along the floor on Anthem's hub as if the floor was made of glue. Why can't I use my jetpack here, damn it? Speaking of frame rates, you will note dips throughout. Do not adjust your eyes, it is something I address later in the video. If you manage to get into the VIP demo, and more importantly, manage to get the servers to load you into a game, do share your thoughts about the best and worst of Anthem. The public demo opens today. That's Friday the 1st if you're watching this in the future, so please dazzle us with your piping hot takes on that. Oh, and if you enjoy this video as we go along, maybe consider giving it a like. Hitting that thumb icon is the YouTube equivalent of dunking a burning hot javelin jetpack into an ice-cool waterfall. Well, that's how it feels to me anyway. Now, let's leap off a cliff and fly into action. So, one of the big things that kept coming up in the comments on my first impressions video was the confusion over what it is that will keep you playing beyond the basic story. I've spent a few hours in Anthem's endgame action and let me tell you that shit is hard. Technically, it is beyond hard. Once you've hit the level cap of 30, you unlock new difficulty settings called Grandmaster 1, 2 and 3. I wonder if they should maybe rename them Grandmasters plural, as at this level the focus is entirely on the interplay between a tight-knit unit of javelins, all equipped to complement one another and have each other's backs. A lone wolf can barge through common difficulties, albeit with a lot of hiding behind rocks as shields recharge, but Grandmaster will cut down big bad wolves like the Huntsman's axe. Learn to play nice and the best loot in the game awaits. And so begins an endless cycle of taking tougher challenges for tougher loot to help with tougher challenges. Turns out the lovely factions of Fort Tarsis were keeping their nastiest freelance work for a rainy day. They have legendary contracts to chew on and there are harder strongholds to conquer. Think MMO dungeons packed with tough enemies and massive bosses. As someone who works for a massive boss, trust me, that is pretty scary. Accelerating a group of level 1 beginners into this environment is maybe not the best way to suss out the depths of the game, but it was easy to appreciate how the action had blossomed out from the early levels. Everything in the game is built around what BioWare like to call Anthem's progression horizons, which probably sounded awesome on the PowerPoint presentation at an EA board meeting, but is a mouthful we'll never be using again. The basic progression is exploration, getting to grips with the world and sniffing out its history by turning every living thing you meet into part of its history. As you go along, you unlock the 4 javelins, letting you get a feel for their differences, find a personal favourite, and the correct answer is Interceptor, and you start working on the best build and pushing into the really messy challenges that await. Now you're in the endless loot spiral, as loot begets more loot. We were given javelins kitted out in rare and epic gear, with a few masterworks for good measure. These are second only to legendary equipment and come with bonus perks that can entirely change the behaviour of weapons or abilities, which leads you down a whole new rabbit hole of creating loadouts to amplify these new skills. It's kind of mad trying to judge an infinite hunt for better weapons in a 3-hour play session, but you do feel quite giddy at opportunities to build a death dealer that is specific to you. And it only gets better when you factor in 3 others, as my next point explains.
On my way.
As I discussed in my early impressions, at the beginning of the game I didn't really feel much of a relationship between javelins. We felt like a team of 4 self-obsessed Tony Starks, drunk on the giddy excitement of pushing the limits of our new suits. However, since playing more of the demo and being able to discuss what I saw in the endgame, it's easier to appreciate the interplay between javelins. There are obvious support moves. The Colossus can taunt enemies into using itself as a bullet sponge, while Storms can deflect projectiles with wind or create a space where powers cool down faster. But the stuff that got me more excited is the idea of primers and detonators, which is an idea you might recognise from BioWare's earlier Mass Effect Andromeda. This system allows certain primer moves to charge enemies with an elemental damage. Think of things like the Ranger's Explosive Blaze or the Interceptor's Cryoglaive. If you then hit a primed enemy with a detonator move like the Colossus's Explosive Mortar, it'll amplify and spread the damage. In the immortal words of Bioshock's Atlas, it's the old 1-2 punch. Although a javelin can prime and detonate by itself, there's much more depth in different suits coordinating attacks. You see, all 4 javelins have combo types that stack a bonus effect on top. The Ranger's combo is Impact, which deals high damage to the specific combo target. The Colossus's Explosion type spreads the pain to the surrounding area. The Storm's Chain combo zaps the damage through a small number of nearby enemies, while the Interceptor's Aura encases our hero in a status aura that matches the elemental damage done. So even though you're fighting repetitive enemies deep into the endgame, I was still pummeling the same Scar at level 30, your grasp of combos and ability to apply them in wicked ways will have hopefully scaled to turn the combat into something a lot more engaging. It's certainly more visually satisfying when pals are finishing attacks for you. It's the kind of spectacle that scripted action sequences can only dream of. Of course, a lot of this hinges on communication. Everything is a bit too fast moving to expect randos to intercept your moves, and our demo experience was full of people playing it like a single player game. I'm hoping Grandmaster will separate the generous wheat from the selfish chaff. As admirable as the Javelin's murdering abilities are, the main thing I adore is how one size fits all, whatever gender character you play. Sure, you choose a character voice and face, a much simpler system than you might expect after the muscle-tugging creator character in Mass Effect and Dragon Age, but once you squeeze into a suit, you could be literally anybody. Could even be your dad. God, imagine if my dad became the world's best Anthem player. Think of the tips videos I could get him to make. Anyway, I also wanted to give a special mention to the Interceptor's butt, because look at it, like a big metal peach. Oh god, I really hope that isn't dad. Of course, when I see an EA logo at the start of the game, my brain automatically enters the Sims mode, so it's lucky that Anthem offers pretty great customization. Okay, what I really want to do is build a bungalow in Fort Tarsis and walk very slowly around it, but I'll settle for javelin tweaking. On one hand, you've got its combat options, 2 weapon slots, 3 gear slots and 6 component slots. Partner this with those masterworks you're hunting in the endgame, and the number of directions you can take the suit in is frankly ridiculous. Handily, you can save 4 loadouts for each javelin, so you're able to work on specific builds simultaneously. Just this level of freedom makes me way more interested than character building in, say, Destiny, where you're lumbered with classes split over multiple save files. And aesthetic choices are out of this world. From being able to choose materials and patterns for every part of your javelin, choosing vinyl stickers to emphasize certain areas, and going into an incredibly granular way to decide what color everything can be, your javelin will almost always be entirely unique. I know that not everyone likes creator character modes, but given that BioWare have stripped out so much of their traditional storytelling, it's really important that you can express yourself where you can. Of course, the race to build the most realistic Iron Man starts here. I'm not as sold on emotes. You just know that we're only a few microtransactions away from watching the Colossus doing the floss dance, but the flare emote is actually very useful in-game to be able to see in dark places. So what about the missions themselves? They're not going to rewrite the action game rulebook. It's a case of go to place, kill enemies in place, repeat process until someone finds a mystical doodad. The difference, BioWare would probably argue, is that you do all this with jetpacks on, so the level has a height and scale to it that few third-person action games do. And yeah, being able to take the fight into the skies does give the game a visual energy all of its own that helps you overlook the rather bare bones of the mission design itself. The best stuff is definitely in the strongholds, where dungeon-like structures have to be cleared out of minions while dealing with genuinely spectacular boss designs. But I think these work because they are best at forcing javelins to work in tandem, which is where the game always shines. As a side note to this, I like that end of missions reward you with an Alliance XP bonus, which goes up the longer you fought beside the people in your team. It's another good way of subtly shepherding people towards the game's best action. By penning the fight in a smaller area, Strongholds also highlight some of the problems Anthem suffers in its wider jungle world. The game doesn't really know how to deal with stragglers for starters. If you're still getting to grips with how your new javelin flies, or you pass over an area you want to explore further and get left behind, or if another freelancer gets to the area before you do, you'll be hit with a loading screen that spawns you into the mission if you don't get there within the countdown. Even if you're the first person to the mission, if it's inside a cave or just not in the outside world, you'll still be hit with a loading screen that otherwise breaks up the flow of a very realistic looking world. I don't have a problem with waiting to load. As I said, I'm a Sims 4 player, so I know my way around a loading screen. And certain points, like leaving or returning to Fort Tarsis, they are to be expected. But when you pitch the world as a giant free-flowing adventure playground, it does shatter immersion. Certainly when you're already near to the location in question. If you accidentally fall off a cliff or your engines overheat and you can't get back to where the action is, guess what? If you don't return to your team in time, you'll be hit by more loading and spawned back into the action. It also struggles to dish out story to 4 people at once. After you finish killing every living thing, you often have to explore to figure out the next step in the story. But if another freelancer on your team finds the thing before you do, the dialogue is triggered for you too. It's now down to you to leg it over to whichever teammate activated the story to find out what is being talked about. I'm not sure there's any co-op game that has solved this particular storytelling problem, but I'm surprised that BioWare didn't try a more sophisticated approach.
Everywhere they went, they were given respect.
Maybe the storytelling's attitude is anything goes out in the wildlands because you're meant to get the meat out of it back at Fort Tarsis, the single-player space. Here is where the game feels most like a traditional BioWare game. It might not have the usual romance options and we can't get jiggy with it with our favourite NPCs, probably for the best based on how slow our weird bodies move around the hub, but the option to respond in character does allow you to shape how the world perceives you. Characters who felt a little distant in my low-level hands-on have transformed by the endgame demo. The dialogue with NPCs has developed a natural flow and charm that paints a satisfying picture of a relationship built up over the course of the game. That's really important both for fans of BioWare's writing and for people looking for Anthem to ground your looting in a more human world. I mean, this is light years ahead of Destiny 2's cast of po-faced exposition givers who stand around the Citadel parping out awkward soundbites. Throughout your time in Anthem, all dialogue options affect your relationship with people you talk to. And if you complete missions for those people, this opens up more dialogue options later in the game. Obviously, it's impossible to tell exactly how varied these relationships can become without playing through all this story for myself, but I was a lot more convinced about Anthem's take on character development once I'd seen late game examples. I should point out that Anthem has been created to let you linger on the story for as much or as little as possible. So if you're here for the action, you can stay for the action, but if you're interested in the story too, there's going to be a lot more for you to enjoy. Where I do get a little flummoxed is where you miss story beats during the mission. As discussed earlier, it can be hard to track events when other people are pushing the tale along. It's quite jarring moving from Fort Tarsis' laid-back exposition to the speed of the battlefield, and I hope people who came for the former aren't left confused by the latter. Again, something we can only tell with the final game.
Let's see about those Arcanists.
During my hands-on with Anthem in the controlled environment, the game ran pretty smoothly throughout. At home on my not-supercomputer, it was a different story. The outside world was smooth, but larger bosses and more flamboyant combos of visual effects could push it into chuggo-vision. As always, we are asked to emphasise it's not a final build, so I nervously await the final game. It would be a huge shame if the game struggled at the exact point the action reaches its full spectacular potential. In our private demo, loading times were quick, so the loading screens were less of an issue, and it all looked and felt pretty amazing to be in. Of course, at home during the demo, I was not playing on a supercomputer and my loading times were horrific, to the point it almost put me off playing after the many times it hung on a loading screen. I lost count of the amount of times I had to tab out, quit the game, to then reopen and try the mission again. One thing that did strike me as a bit off, both in the demo and in my hands-on time, were the menu controls and getting to grips with the flying. Loading a mission was not at all obvious. I had to press F to ready the mission and I had to press R to go to the forge. How does that make sense? The button options are literally switched around first letters of the words. Come on! During my hands-on, my teammates started all of the missions, so when I came to the demo over the weekend, I was totally stumped. And the flying. Oh, the flying. On a controller it's fantastic. It's stunning to look at and it's stunning to fly through the vistas of the world. But on mouse and keyboard it's really damn hard actually figuring out how to fly your javelin. To the point where it's actually infuriating and you get a bit nervous before you launch off. How many cliff faces will I fly into this time? And don't even talk to me about flying underwater. Almost impossible and nearly made me quit the game there and then. No matter what mouse sensitivity you chose, it felt like nothing was good enough. Fiddling around with the in-game options menu, of which has also clearly been optimised for controllers, not keyboards, didn't help at all either. Anthem just doesn't feel like a game that was made for mouse and keyboard. Who clicks on a menu subheader when you can see the options you want to change right there unless you're using a controller? Also, I'm not entirely sure what Fort Tarsis runs on, but it's probably something in the potato family. How does a small portion of the game that has literally huge walls and therefore a set draw distance run so badly? And how does it run worse than the huge open world outside? The frame rate was so poor inside Fort Tarsis, it made me wish I could stay in my javelin all day. Yeah, the smell would be pretty horrendous, but at least I would experience a smoother game. Having played a proper cross-section of the game, I feel more at ease with what Anthem is doing. I see the potential in the co-op and appreciate the challenges that'll actually make it worth mastering. Likewise, there is more character and life here than I previously predicted. It just takes a while to emerge between the missions. Of course, I've played all this with a very unnatural progression, so I need to play the game out in the wild to see how it all adds up. My few gripes are not enough to stop me from wanting to play more of it, and I'll be jetting off into the demo this weekend. There is nothing here that has put me off entirely, and I went in with pretty low expectations of finding a Destiny clone at my fingertips. What do you think of Anthem so far? Are you excited for it? Have you had much of a chance to play it yet? Do let us know what you think in the comments. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask and I'll do my best to answer them for you. If you found this video helpful, why not check out our previews of other upcoming PC treats, like Far Cry New Dawn or Rage 2. You could always subscribe and get the goods on tap. Thanks for watching and we hope to see you again for more Anthem goodness soon.